No one expected the man in the corner booth to be the owner. Not the tired waitress who hadn't taken a single break all day. Not the young cook who quietly stood by her side. And definitely not the loud manager barking orders as if he ran the world. But he didn't. Elijah Moore did. Elijah wasn't always a CEO. A decade ago, he was just a man with a dream. A dream to create a diner where families could laugh over pancakes and workers could grab coffee on their way to a better day. He called it Moore's Family Diner, and slowly it grew. One location became 5, then 10, and now 13. But lately, something had shifted. Complaints started trickling in. Cold meals, long wait times, unhappy customers. The kind of things Elijah never wanted tied to his name. His managers told him not to worry. "It's just a rough patch," they said. "We're handling it." But Elijah didn't believe in ignoring whispers, especially when those whispers came from the people he built everything for. So, he made a decision. He would go see it for himself. No fancy suits, no name tag, no boardroom title, just a man in jeans, a hoodie, thick-rimmed glasses, and a scruffy beard that made him unrecognizable. He chose one of the furthest diners, 2 hours from his main office, a quiet spot in the suburbs, close enough to drive, but far enough that no one would know his face. When he walked in, the place looked fine at first glance. Clean floors, soft music, the clink of plates and murmurs of conversation. But Elijah had learned a long time ago, looks can lie. He slid into a booth by the window. That's when he met Kayla. She looked no older than 25. Her eyes held kindness, but also exhaustion. Her smile was there, but it didn't reach all the way. Her name tag was slightly crooked, and her hands trembled just a little as she set down the menu. "Hi there," she said softly. "Welcome in. Can I get you something to drink?" "Just coffee, thanks," Elijah replied. She nodded and disappeared. Elijah watched her move, fast-focused, like she was constantly racing against a clock. She served drinks, cleaned up plates, checked orders, all without rest. Then it happened. A harsh voice thundered from the kitchen. "Kayla, you're falling behind again." Elijah turned his head. A man stomped out from the back. A thick, red-faced manager with a stained apron and no patience. "Ron." His name tag read. Kayla flinched, but she didn't talk back. Just gave a quick nod, forced a smile, and kept going. Elijah's stomach sank. This wasn't how he'd built Moore's Family Diner. He believed in respect, especially for the staff. He believed kindness should start behind the counter, not just in front of it. The longer he sat there, the more he noticed. A family behind him whispered that their food was taking too long. 2 teenagers in the next booth quietly laughed at how rude the manager was. The happy, easygoing vibe Elijah had built from the ground up, it was gone. When Kayla returned with his burger and fries, she apologized for the wait. "I'm really sorry," she said, barely meeting his eyes. Elijah offered her a kind smile. "You're doing great." She blinked, surprised, like she hadn't heard that in a long time. Then he heard it, a soft sound coming from the kitchen. Crying. At first, he wasn't sure, but then he heard her voice, shaky, broken, trying to hold it together. "I haven't had a break in 6 hours," she said through tears. "I'm doing everything I can." Ron's reply was like a punch to the gut. "If you can't handle the pressure, maybe you're in the wrong job." Elijah couldn't sit still anymore. He stood, walked through the kitchen doors, and found her. Kayla stood by the sink, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her uniform. Ron stood over her, arms crossed. 2 cooks stood by the grill, pretending not to see. Elijah cleared his throat. "Is there a problem here?" Ron turned, annoyed. "Just a little miscommunication." Elijah didn't respond right away. He looked at Kayla, saw the pain in her face, The embarrassment. She needs a break, Elijah said. We're short-staffed. There's no time for breaks during lunch rush, Ron replied flatly. Elijah's voice remained calm. There's always time to treat people like human beings. One of the cooks, Isaac, a quiet young man, spoke up. She's been going non-stop since she clocked in. She hasn't even had water. Ron shot him a glare. Stay out of it, Isaac. Elijah stepped forward. Maybe someone else should be running things around here. Ron puffed up. And who are you exactly? But Elijah didn't answer. Not yet. He walked back to his booth, left some cash under the receipt, and smiled gently at Kayla as she passed. Hang in there, he said. Outside, he pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Janet, clear my schedule. I want a full report on the suburban diner. Staff files, reviews, everything. She didn't ask questions. She knew that tone. Elijah wasn't just visiting anymore. He was going to fix it. The next morning, Elijah Moore returned to the diner. Same scruffy hoodie, same thick-rimmed glasses, same disguise. But this time, he wasn't just observing. He was ready to act. The place looked the same on the outside. Same flickering open sign. Same cracked booth near the window. But now, Elijah knew better. He had seen what most customers didn't. The exhaustion in Kayla's eyes, the tension in the air, the disrespect that simmered behind the kitchen doors. Inside, the diner was quieter than the day before. Morning shifts were usually slow. Only a few customers sat sipping coffee, reading newspapers, or scrolling their phones. Elijah took the same seat in the same booth and began watching again. Kayla was already there, moving slower than yesterday. Her smile was thinner, her steps heavier. She still greeted customers politely, but the sparkle in her voice had faded. Isaac, the young cook, worked quietly in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and prepping for the day. He gave Kayla a soft nod whenever she passed by, just enough to say, I see you. Ron hadn't arrived yet. Elijah sipped his coffee and waited. A few minutes later, the swinging doors burst open. Ron stomped in like he owned the place, muttering something about shipments being late. The moment he entered, the atmosphere shifted. Tension filled the air like steam rising from a boiling pot. Ron barked orders at Isaac. You didn't prep the onions? What you been doing back here? Isaac mumbled. I'm getting to them. Get to it faster, Ron snapped. Elijah watched, his jaw tight. He had given Ron a chance to prove him wrong. But this confirmed everything. As the morning picked up, a customer flagged Kayla down. An older man with a weathered face and a flannel shirt pointed at his plate. These eggs are overcooked. Kayla immediately apologized. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll have the kitchen remake them. The man grumbled. Can't you just get it right the first time? Kayla's cheeks flushed, but she nodded and took the plate. That's when Ron exploded. What now, Kayla? He shouted from across the diner. You sent out the wrong order again? The entire room went silent. Kayla tried to explain, but Ron waved her off. How many times do I have to remind you? Double check before you send anything out. This is basic stuff. Enough. Elijah stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. That's enough, he said, his voice calm, but strong. Ron turned, surprised. And who the hell do you think you are? Elijah reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and flipped it open. His company ID gleamed under the diner lights. My name is Elijah Moore. I own this diner. And 12 others just like it. The room froze. Kayla stood still, stunned. Isaac peeked out from the kitchen, wide-eyed. The customers turned, whispering. Ron's face paled. I didn't realize. No, you didn't, Elijah interrupted. Because if you had, you wouldn't be speaking to my staff like that, or embarrassing them in front of customers. Ron tried to recover. I was just doing my job, You call this leadership? Elijah's voice rose slightly, firm but not yelling. You've created a toxic environment. People are afraid to take breaks. They're crying in the kitchen. And you stand here acting like that's okay. Ron opened his mouth to argue. We're done talking out here, Elijah said, motioning to the back. Office. Now! Without another word, Ron turned and marched to the office. Elijah followed. Behind the closed door, Elijah didn't waste time. You've been with us 2 years, he began. But what I saw these past 2 days, how you treat people, how you run this shift, is not what this company stands for. Ron tried again. It's a tough job. I'm under pressure too. That doesn't give you permission to break people down, Elijah said coldly. I don't need that kind of leadership, and I'm not going to let it continue. Ron's eyes widened. Wait, you're firing me? I am, Elijah replied, no hesitation. Effective immediately. Ron stood, stunned. For once, he had no words. I'll make sure HR processes your severance. But you won't be stepping foot behind that counter again. Without a reply, Ron left the office, head down, avoiding everyone's gaze. When Elijah walked back into the dining room, silence followed him. He stood tall in front of the staff and customers. Things are going to change, starting today. He turned to Kayla and Isaac, both still frozen by what just happened. Meet me after your shift. We need to talk. The rest of the day moved like a slow breath after a storm. Kayla worked quietly, but her shoulders were less tense. Isaac focused on his prep, glancing every so often to make sure Kayla was okay. Elijah sat at the counter now, sipping coffee, jotting down notes, and speaking to customers who seemed grateful for his presence. Later that evening, after the last table was cleared and the closed sign flipped, Kayla and Isaac approached him. They looked tired, but also relieved. Elijah motioned to a booth. Let's sit. They slid into the booth across from him. No uniforms, no titles, just people, tired, but finally being heard. First of all, Elijah began softly. Thank you. For showing up. For sticking it out. For not giving up. Kayla looked down. I almost did, she whispered. I know, Elijah replied. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Isaac chimed in. We just wanted to help. We weren't trying to stir up trouble. I know, Elijah said again. And that's exactly why I'm here. He leaned in, eyes steady. You two kept this place running when everything was falling apart. That matters. And I won't forget it. Kayla's voice cracked. It's just sometimes it felt like no one cared. I care, Elijah said. Starting today, everything changes. He told them his plan. Better staffing, fairer schedules, and hiring a new manager who actually leads with heart. I'm also giving you both something back, he said with a small smile. He turned to Isaac. I want you to be assistant manager. You already act like one. Isaac's mouth dropped open. Me? You've earned it. Then he turned to Kayla. And you've held this place together when no one else would. You deserve more. Her eyes welled up. I'm raising your pay. And starting a bonus system to reward hard work. Not just words, but real appreciation. Kayla covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. No one's ever said that to me before. Not like this. Elijah smiled. You deserve it. And he meant it. The next few weeks felt like watching a wilted flower bloom back to life. Elijah more kept his promise. He didn't just make announcements and leave. He showed up. Every morning, hoodie on, notebook in hand, sleeves rolled up. Sometimes he worked the grill with Isaac. Other times, he bussed tables or restocked the fridge. But mostly, he listened, really listened, to the people who made his diner what it was. It wasn't easy. Change never is. But slowly, things started to shift. New energy in the air. The first change came when a new manager arrived. Her name was Denise, a middle-aged woman with a calm voice, quick wit, and years of restaurant experience. From the first moment she stepped inside, she greeted every staff member by name. She didn't yell. She asked questions. She offered help before criticism. Within 2 days, the staff started to breathe again. Kayla noticed at first. "She actually listens," she told Elijah during one of their breaks. "I forgot what that felt like." Elijah smiled. That's the goal. Isaac had settled into his assistant manager role with quiet pride. He was nervous at first, afraid he'd mess something up. But Elijah coached him through it, and Denise supported him fully. One day, after successfully handling a lunchtime rush, Isaac stood beside Elijah with a wide grin on his face. "I think I'm getting the hang of this," he said. Elijah clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You were always meant for more. You just needed the chance." Customers noticed too. The diner began to feel lighter, happier. Customers walked in and were greeted with genuine smiles. Orders came out faster. The kitchen moved like a team instead of a war zone. Kayla started adding little touches again. Crayons for kids, fresh flowers by the register, kind words to lonely diners. Reviews on social media improved. One customer posted, "Moore's Diner used to feel like just another pit stop. Now, it feels like home again." That post went viral, and Elijah knew. It wasn't about new paint or fancy menus. It was about people, about rebuilding trust and making others feel seen. The heartfelt conversation. One quiet afternoon, as the lunch crowd died down and the sun streamed in through the windows, Kayla approached Elijah at the counter. She looked more confident now. Her uniform was cleaner. Her shoulders didn't sag anymore. But there was still something she wanted to say. "Can I talk to you for a second?" she asked. "Of course," Elijah said, setting down his coffee. She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I was going to quit that day you first walked in," she admitted. "I was so tired. I didn't even care about the paycheck anymore. I just didn't feel like I mattered." Elijah stayed silent, letting her speak. "But then you stood up for me. You didn't even know me, but you saw something, and that changed everything." She blinked back tears. "I just wanted to say thank you for showing up when no one else did." Elijah looked her in the eyes and said gently, "You matter, Kayla. You always did. I just needed to be reminded of what really counts." And in that moment, both of them knew they weren't just talking about work. They were talking about dignity, about value, about being human. Looking ahead, by the end of the month, the diner was almost unrecognizable, in the best way. They had hired 3 new part-time staff, easing the burden on the team. Elijah invested in updating the old kitchen equipment. Breaks were scheduled fairly. The energy in the building had shifted from survival to pride. And word spread. Customers came not just for the food, but for the warmth, the welcome, the story. Local newspapers wrote about the CEO who went undercover to save his diner. Staff from other Moore's locations started sharing their own stories. Change was coming company-wide. One evening, just before closing, Elijah gathered the staff around. Denise stood beside him. Isaac leaned on the counter. Kayla held a notepad in her hand, but it was clear she wasn't thinking about orders anymore. "I just want to say," Elijah began, "you've reminded me what this place was always supposed to be." He looked at each of them. A place where people feel respected, where their work matters, where no one gets left behind. There were no big speeches, no fireworks, just a quiet moment of gratitude. Kayla smiled. Isaac nodded. Denise gave a proud clap. Then, someone from the back called out, "So who's buying dessert?" The room burst into laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. The final reflection. As Elijah locked the front door that night and stepped into the cool evening air, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. He looked back at the glowing diner sign, now fixed and steady. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a reminder that no matter how far we rise, we must never forget the people who helped us build. That kindness doesn't need a title. That leadership starts by listening. And sometimes, the greatest changes don't come from boardrooms or spreadsheets, but from a man in a hoodie, sitting quietly in a booth, willing to see the truth and act on it. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still matters, and that one voice, your voice, can make a difference. Subscribe for more powerful true life stories that remind us of the strength in compassion, the courage to lead with love, and the beauty of doing what's right, even when no one is watching. Let's keep spreading hope, one story at a time.